Hi everyone, Pete here. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how I use natural language prompts inside of VS Code using GitHub Copilot to enhance a Python-based agentic AI cybersecurity model. And what I'm going to demonstrate is a reliable improvement process that works for me and keeps me in as much control as possible. This is the process I'm going to be going through in this video: plan, verify, edit, test, commit, push, and tag. And this is more of a cyclical process as opposed to like a linear process. And if this is your first time doing a project like this, I highly recommend using this write-up as kind of a guideline. I still refer to it just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything or skipping steps. So just know that this resource exists and it's here to help you. I will post a link to this in the video description below. Okay, here we are in VS Code. And I'm just going to give a quick overview of what we're looking at here. This is definitely not a VS Code tutorial video, and it's definitely not a Python tutorial video. So I encourage you to go out there and find resources that will help you get more proficient at Python. This is when I open this folder here through the Explorer function here, it opened up the versions of the files that are located on my local machine. And then because I've got my GitHub account that's logged in and synced with VS Code, I'm able to commit and tag projects. So in addition to that, I was able to sign up for the Git Copilot Pro. It's like $10 a month. And then what that did, it enabled me to have access to more sophisticated AI models like GPT-5. So that's what I've been using. And right here in the middle, this is all of our Python code in the project. And these are our different folder or files up here, our folder. Below that is the terminal where we're going to be entering commands, running the agent and testing the agent, and then also doing our Git commits and tags. On the right-hand side here is our interface with Git Copilot. I also want to note that the AI agent model that we're using in this video has real-time telemetry coming from the CyberRange's Azure Log Analytics workspace. So if we run queries in this and get malicious confirmed threat activities against machines in the network, those are real threats coming from real threat actors. And I find that interesting. It kind of makes it a little more real and relevant. All right, so let's get started with the project. First stage is plan, right? So we got to plan out what do we want to do here? Ambiguity is the enemy, and the GitHub Copilot will follow any direction it's given. So the quality of your result directly reflects the precision of your plan. Super important, right? That's why the human element is so important in this process, because it's us that has to have the clear vision of what we want to do, and then we have to explain that in a way that we get the results that we want. All right, so what I like to do is I've noticed that there's an input validation problem in the agent, and anytime you're prompted for a yes or a no, it'll accept anything that starts with a Y or anything that'll start with an N, right? So that's a problem. So let's clean that up. So what I want to do is go to ChatGPT and have it help craft a natural language prompt that we can feed into Git Copilot to get the project started. So since this is the planning stage, we just want to get all of our prompts in a row before we do anything with Git Copilot. Super important to take your time here to really think this process out and to think this out. So I think this is pretty comprehensive. One thing I've learned through this process is some of the terminology that's in this. Preserving current logic paths is really important. Guardrail enforcement, because I've built a lot of guardrails into the agent. Don't want to remove any existing error handling, and you want to maintain a consistent user experience. So I'm pretty happy with that as a draft prompt to go into ChatGPT, not Git Copilot, just ChatGPT. So let's send that. All right, so it's just pretty much summarizing what I said. Kind of what we're asking it to do is just to create this. It's like a helper function. It's probably going to end up in the utilities file. I'm good with that. All right, so I've copied that prompt. I'm happy with the prompt, and I think I'm pretty content with the planning stage being complete. And now we're on to verify. So the first thing we want to do is go back to VS Code, right? You're going to notice here that I've added this file, Copilot instructions markdown. So you want to do this. You want to go into the file, your project file on your local machine, and create a .github folder. And within that folder, create a Copilot instructions markdown. And in GitHub, I've got the contents of my instructions here, so you can use those, or you can make your own. This seems to be working well for me, but essentially what I'm telling it to do is just stay in like a read first mode. Don't just make changes without my consent. And I want to make sure that it's summarizing and understands the intent of the complete project that I'm working on. So in my instructions markdown, I can manually run this. I actually have an automated script so that it will run this every time I open VS Code, but it's not enough, right? So anytime you make changes, you've got to remind it to reread, but right, because changes have been made and the context may have changed. So I've got just a line right here that instructs it to read everything, and I'll do that. It gave me this printed message that I instructed it to after it has completed reviewing everything. Context loaded successfully, ready for safe operations. Okay, so we have to do one more thing before we start, right? And that is to create a commit, right? So I want to make sure that I've got a snapshot before we start making changes. So I've actually already done it on here, but I'm going to go through the motions so you can see the commands. But so the first thing you want to do is check your status. Okay, so what this is telling me is that my local branch is ahead of the master online on GitHub by 2 commits, which is fine, right? And let's see, and whatever is on my local machine has been committed, so that's great. But if that wasn't the case, if there was something to commit, we would go git add, and then we would do a commit, right? So git commit -m, and then you name it. So it's a snapshot, and then you want to define it. It's a baseline before input validation changes, right? So boom, we've got our snapshot, we've got our prompts. We know that the model has read our instructions document, and now we're ready to get into it. The fun part, right? So the actual editing and testing. We've got our prompt from the planning stage ready to go. So I've got that in Notepad here. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it down here and go for it. All right. So, I mean, my takeaway is that we've got this new function being called here that's a true false boolean for yes and no, and it pretty much is just iterating everything we asked it to do regarding what it will accept for input. The only thing I'm not sure about is this guardrail disable prompt, why it's being removed, right? So since I'm unsure about that, you know what I'm going to go ahead and do? First, I'm going to take a look at this. Okay, well, after reviewing Copilot's output, it does look like all the guardrails remain intact. But, you know, since I'm not 100% comfortable, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy this whole section and then see what ChatGPT has to say about this situation. Okay, so it kind of confirms that it's kind of a minor change. All right, so back in VS Code, I want to review in a little bit more detail here the changes being made. Okay, after review, so part of edit is review. And I think I've done a review. ChatGPT has given its opinion, and I've manually reviewed what I'm able to review. And so I'm going to go ahead and click keep. So never forget to click keep. It's kind of an easy to miss thing. So we'll keep it. Okay, so now it's time to test our change that we kept. And we're on to the testing stage here of the process. And, the best way to do that is just to run the application, throw in some queries into the system, and hopefully, provide a query that will prompt the yes, no user input events, and we'll be able to test our change. We're going to go ahead and run the agent, and you always want to run from main. So the main file is like the entry point that initializes the agent, and it loads configurations and essentially just orchestrates all of the core components. So main's where you want to be. And then the prompt I'm going to give it is a prompt that I've used in the past that usually generates multiple malicious threat events, and which will then allow me to be prompted whether I want to drop the guardrails that I've employed, and then implement isolation on the computer, which will be all of my yes, no prompts. So here's the prompt I like to use. I'm concerned that that unauthorized login attempts have tried to access Windows Target 1 in the past many days. Right there, what I'm trying to do is trigger I've got like a time window enforcement rule for possible travel locations or malware, or so essentially just like give me all the problems. So let's see what happens. All right, so the first prompt I'm getting, it's not related to our input validation, but it's interesting because it's one of the improvements I made. So anytime you give it a vague timeline, it's going to prompt for an actual hour count. And I set the max hours to 72. So we'll do 72 here. The default's 12. If I just hit enter, it would go 12. All right, cool. So what you'll see here is it also triggered, I've got a row cap maximum. So I've got like a 2000 record maximum I set because, it's all based on tokens, and we don't want to be like spending unnecessary tokens on logs that are older than we need to access. So so this again is another one of the improvements I put into the model I'm using. And it's prompting us, God, that's expensive. It wants 7 cents. Usually it's like 1/100 of a cent. Nano 4.1. We're going to go Nano 4.1 because like it's 4 cents cheaper. All right, so we've got 4 potential threats. Let's check out the results. All right, great. So we get to test our prompts now. So to test this, I'm going to type yellow. Please enter yes or no. That's good. It's working. So now I'm going to type, Norman. Didn't like Norman either. How else could we test this, right? So let's do something not Y or N. So let's just do IHOP. Doesn't like it, right? But we're continuously being prompted, which is nice. So I am going to disable the guardrails. But so, and it's really important, like now I'm venturing into dangerous territory with like isolation prompts, right? So maximum effort on attention needs to be paid to this step. So we're going to disable our guardrails. I'll type yes. And then there is a password. It's a super secure password. Boom. Okay, so guardrails are temporarily disabled. Again, this is one of the improvements I did to the model, just to put like a check on isolation. Okay, so I do not want to isolate this VM, right? So I'm going to hit no. Okay, so it restored the guardrails, isolation not executed, and now it's moving on to the next threat it identified that was a high confidence malicious. We're just going to go ahead and go, instead of no, we're going to say, let's try negative. Doesn't like it. Good. How about nope? Nope, doesn't like it. How about no? Perfect. And then the third threat it's prompting us for, we're going to also go no, because I think we've pretty much tested our input validation logic and it's working. So this is good news. We're just going to go no. And then the query exits, and I'm back to the home prompt. So now we're on to the final few stages of the project, which are pretty straightforward. Commit is essentially making one last snapshot or commit from the project. So it's identical to our previous commit that we did. The only difference is if you want to see the changes that you made in the terminal, all the code changes in red and green, you can do it diff command. And otherwise, it's just the identical commit process that we did earlier. Just remember to change the name to something like finalized or complete to differentiate it from your previous commit. And now we're on push. Push is the easiest one. You're essentially pushing your local changes to your GitHub repository online. So it's just git push. The last stage is tag, where we're essentially creating a restore point or rollback point. So it's pretty similar to a commit, except for instead of commit, you've got tag, and you just want to have a clear descriptor. You can do feature specific versions. So that might be clearer. That might work better for you to have a more consistent terminology. In addition, I've got some instructions on GitHub that I won't go through here, but it's how to restore from a snapshot or a tag. And then the last thing I want to do in VS Code is just verify that our synchronization worked with GitHub. Okay, back in VS Code, we just want to make sure that we're working on the correct branch before pushing any updates. So you can go git branch, and master is what you want to see there. And then let's verify that the local repository is linked to the correct GitHub remote. So we'll go git remote v. And you want the fetch and the push to be the same. They are. Great. Next, we want to view our most recent commit. And right here, you can see that is what we named it. So we've just confirmed that. And now let's check the latest commit on the remote just to confirm that it matches. So we'll go git log origin master 1. And here we can compare the hashes. So 4C7A, 4C7A, they match. And that's great. Back in GitHub here, if those didn't match for you, you can just push the origin master. So just run that and it should sync those up for you. The last thing I want to do is just verify all of the synchronizations work correctly on GitHub. So just a sanity check for me. I just like to look in the web browser and make sure everything aligns with what we saw in the terminal. So here we are in the repo, and you can see, you can correlate when you made the changes to the change times that are reflected here. So I made these changes last night, so that makes sense to me. You could also check your commit name. So you can click on commit here, and that is in line with what we did. So that checks out. And then lastly, you can check your tags as well. So just click tags, just confirm that that's the name of the tag that you most recently did. It is. So that checks out. Lastly, remember, this is a cyclical process and you may not be done working on your improvements, in which case you would want to remember right now to remind Copilot to reread the instructions document, because any change you made, remember, changes the context of your project. And you always want Copilot to be working on the most updated understanding of the context of your project. All right, so that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you got enough out of this intro video to get started. Take care.